Hello, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to explain how superdeterminism destroys Sam Harris. This video is what they failed to teach you in college philosophy class about the philosophy of Sam Harris. When I speak of superdeterminism, I'm speaking of a particular and unique version of superdeterminism called Hansonian superdeterminism. Is based on a proof by Swedish theoretical physicist Dr. Johan Hansen, which was published in the peer-reviewed physics journal Physics Essays, Volume 33, Number 2, June of 2020, pages 216 through 218. It is entitled Bell's Theorem and Its Tests, Proof that Nature is Superdeterministic, Not Random. So Hansonian superdeterminism says that we live in a static block universe without cause and effect in physics, or physical causation, or probabilistic causation. This is not the same as classic superdeterminism, first posited by Dr. John Bell in 1985, because classic superdeterminism uses hidden causal variables, whereas Dr. Hansen disproved causation. So Hansonian superdeterminism cannot rely on hidden causal variables. Instead, Hansonian superdeterminism says we live in 3 dimensions of space and one hidden static dimension of time in this 4th dimensional block universe, which consists of particles or events that are like pebbles set in concrete. Uh, they don't move, you can't change them. Uh, However, they exhibit a particular pattern through the static dimension of time, which we describe as our mathematical laws of physics. So, in a Hansonian static block universe, all the events, past, present, and future, are all equally real. They all presently exist, and you can't change them, and you can't move anything, and it's all permanent. So, with that in mind, I've listed 6 points of Sam Harris's philosophy on the board, and I'm going to explain how superdeterminism disproves each and every one of them. Number 6, no scientific evidence for God. Under Hansonian superdeterminism, this is patently untrue. There is, in fact, circumstantial scientific evidence for God. And circumstantial evidence is still evidence. So, what is the circumstantial scientific evidence for God under Hansonian superdeterminism? And it's simply the atemporal creation of our static block universe, meaning that our static block universe was created outside of space-time. And you can infer the atemporal creation of our static block universe from things like, for example, the existence of transcendent logic. There was a recent scientific experiment which showed that that virtual particles played a role in particle collisions with hyperons. But virtual particles are mathematical constructs. They're not real by definition. So if there is this transcendent logic that's underlying what happens in a particle collision, then there must have been a temporal creation, because why else would you need transcendent logic involved at all? Unless it's the blueprint for the creation of the universe, the mathematical structure that underlies the creation of the static block universe. I would also point out the wave-like mathematics of quantum mechanics. So you could ask, well, why is the mathematics of quantum mechanics wave-like? And one answer is because of destructive interference. So if you imagine two pebbles and you drop them into a pond and they create ripples, and these ripples come towards each other. At points of constructive interference, you'll get twice the wave height. But at other points of destructive interference, you'll just get stillness or canceling out of these waves. Well, if you look at that in reverse, what you get is you get waves from nothing. So that implies that our static block universe was atemporally created from nothing. All right, number 5. Humans cannot know metaphysical truths that cannot be empirically tested. Again, however, Hansonian superdeterminism proves Sam Harris wrong. Um, because human consciousness is a physical reality and aspect of the block universe, then it is conceivable that human thoughts can know metaphysical truths without learning those things through scientific empirical experimentation. So I'll give you an example. If you consciously decide to move your arm movement is uh, a physical reality, and the movement itself must be predetermined and existing in the future static dimension of time under Hansonian superdeterminism. But if your arm movement is predetermined, then your conscious decision to move your arm must also be predetermined in order for your arm movement to be predetermined. That means your conscious uh, awareness has to be a predetermined aspect of the block universe. And it's located right where your brain particles happen to be. And since your brain particles are physical realities, then those must be what are predetermined in the block universe to give rise to our predetermined conscious awareness. So, because human consciousness or conscious thoughts are not independent of the block universe, it's not an independent process, it's an aspect of the block universe, then there's no reason why human thoughts cannot exhibit metaphysical truths. And more so because God created the static block universe, God can predetermine human thoughts to know metaphysical truths without the use of any scientific experimentation at all. Um, so that is clearly possible under Hansonian superdeterminism. Number 4, morals derive from objectively real peaks of human flourishing and valleys of unnecessary suffering. So this is Sam Harris's attempt to give morality an objective basis in empirical science based on the objective reality of human suffering and flourishing. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, every event in the universe, past, present, and future, is predetermined, including Christianity and the Bible itself. So when God created the block universe, God predetermined Christianity to be the predominant world religion in terms of members throughout history, from which one can reasonably infer that God intended Christianity to be his true message for humanity. And Christianity contains moral teachings. Therefore, Christian moral teachings are reasonably inferred to be objectively true. So you don't need this sort of morality when you have Christian morality already. And God has already indicated by making it predominant that these are the morals that God recognizes for humanity. Number three, there is no sin because there is no free will. While Hansonian superdeterminism agrees that there is no free will on Earth, there can't be because the future is predetermined and closed. So you can't possibly decide any way that would be incongruent with that predetermined future. So there's no way you could decide something that really could have been decided otherwise. It's all predetermined, including your choices, your decisions. However, there is what I call cinematism. Cinematism is a reasonable inference you can make that God predetermines our block universe to exhibit what God already knows are hypothetical, freely willed decisions to be. And you can reasonably infer that God does that because he would have to in order to be righteously justified in sending people to hell or heaven, uh, because his decision making must be based on his knowledge of our freely willed decisions. Otherwise, he's sending people to hell for no for a reason that isn't a result of their own moral decision making. That would be arbitrary and unjust. So, because of cinematism, one can reasonably infer that God exhibits our behavior on earth to reflect what he already knows our hypothetical decisions would be, including our decisions to sin. So, cinematism allows for an exhibition of sin even in our predetermined static block universe. All right. Number two, meaning of life is well being of conscious creatures and the reduction of suffering. However, under Hansonian superdeterminism, a universal meaning of life cannot be a potential. And the reason for this is in a static block universe, every event in your life, from birth to death, still exists in the static block universe. So you are still consciously experiencing 5 minutes ago, and you are consciously experiencing 5 minutes from now. The only difference is that presently you are in a particular location within the static dimension of time. So you can only experience that present location. But that doesn't mean you don't also exist 5 minutes earlier in a different location in the static dimension of time, experiencing that. And the same with the future. You're in a different location in the static dimension of time in the future, and you're experiencing the future right now. So everybody has a block life. All the events of their life are predetermined, fixed, permanent. You can think of it as an information packet through the static dimension of time consisting of your body's particles. That's your block life. It's permanent. You are an immortal in the block universe. So it makes no sense to say to somebody that some potential X is the meaning of life when X doesn't appear in that person's block life and never could, because you can't change your block life without cause and effect in physics. So a universal meaning of life can only be something that all human beings, living human beings, have in common, which is they all have block lives. So the only universal meaning of life is the predetermined role your block life plays in the predetermined universe that has been predetermined and planned by God. So potentials cannot be universal meanings of life, such as the potentials of the well being of conscious creatures and the reduction of suffering. That can't be a universal meaning of life. Indeed, there are babies born without cerebrums. So they are living beings, but they have no conscious experience. So for them in their block life, it's impossible for them to worry about the well being of conscious beings and to reduce suffering when they're not even consciously aware of these concepts or these things. So number two is clearly wrong as a universal meaning of life. Number one, the ego or self is not real. So Sam Harris says, look, if you looked inside somebody's brain and you looked at all the neurons and all the brain particles and all the matter that was in somebody's brain, you are never going to find somebody's self or ego. You're never going to find that person in that brain matter. And he's right, you won't. But we all experience the self and the ego. So we all know it's real. It's just not something you can observe by looking through somebody's brain matter. Now, under Hansonian superdeterminism, consciousness is a predetermined aspect and physical reality of the block universe, but it is also immaterial. So while it is an illusion of the block universe, it's a real illusion, and so is our sense of self and ego. It's a real illusion, meaning the illusion exists. It's there. It's just that it's not exactly what the static block universe is. In other words, we are consciously aware of movement, but there is no movement in the block universe, which means our conscious awareness of movement must be an illusion. But we still have this real illusion of conscious movement. So, where is this immaterial self or ego? Well, if I were to guess, I would say this. I would say, if you look at the mathematical laws of physics, what it's telling you is that our universe is logic, because math is logic. So, because our physical universe has a reality as a form of logic based on particles that exist in it, there doesn't seem to be any reason why a different form of reality could exist based on a different form of logic, which arises from the arrangement of brain particles. So, brain particles are sophisticatedly arranged through the static dimension of time to exhibit a different form of logic, a logic I call the logic of the possible. And because that logic exists, it must exist in a reality. But it's a different form of reality that we experience as this immaterial conscious state. So the self or the ego is a real illusion. It's just that it's using a different form of logic than the particle logic that you would see inside a brain. So this consciousness, this different form of logic, this different reality can only be experienced uh, by the arrangement of brain particles itself. It's not something you can look at. You have to experience it through the static dimension of time. Doesn't mean it isn't a real illusion. It is a real illusion. It's just a different form of reality due to a different form of logic, a logic that arises from a particular arrangement of brain particles in the static dimension of time. So the ego or self is in fact real. Uh, and under cinematism, because God can know the hypothetical freely will decisions of persons, then the idea of personhood being exhibited in our static block universe through cinematism is reasonably inferable. So the idea that there can be real identities of persons or personhood based on cinematism is a sound idea. And the self and ego can be based on God's metaphysical understanding of real hypothetical persons. All right, so I hope you learned something, and I'll give you a second to read the board. All right, until next time, take care.